That year, when I could barely make ends meet, I found a brilliant but destitute student in a filthy alley, who had been through hell. His eyes were vacant as he said, "Do whatever you want with me." I did nothing of the sort. I simply cleaned him up and dressed him in a fresh white shirt. Stammering earnestly, I said, "Just stay alive." Later, he taught himself and got into the best university, eventually becoming the youngest PhD supervisor. On an ordinary summer evening when I picked him up, he coldly rejected a girl with a warm smile once again. For the first time, I heard him ask nervously, losing his composure, "What does it mean to like someone?" I saw the expensive brooch she had given him in his hand, and I knew it was time for me to leave. Ding! This novel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. As I was about to leave with my packed bags, I took one last look at the rented flat where I had lived for years. It was cramped and stuffy. The only good thing was the potted cactus on the windowsill. I bent down to straighten Elijah's slippers on the top shelf of the shoe rack. With a thud, the iron door closed tightly, stirring up a thin layer of dust in the sunlight. Before Elijah Carter left for the lecture, he showed me the property deed at the dinner table. It was for a brand new, beautiful flat in the city center. I wondered how long it had taken him to save up for it. He said, "I'll pay you back gradually." "No need to pay me back," I replied. "When I saved him, I never intended for him to repay me." He coldly said, "Once it's paid off, we're even." I silently pushed the prawn cocktail and a plate of salad towards him. Elijah lowered his head to eat, but I could still make out his striking, chiseled profile. Through the present, I could faintly see the image of the high school boy from years ago, standing at the podium, his slender figure swaying in the breeze. Love doesn't always need to be known by others. No one said that giving must always be rewarded. In the future, he should be just as I imagined, spirited and shining bright like the moon. Being with him for so long, I was already content. I quietly rested my chin on my palm, watching him intently, and suddenly said out of the blue, "Elijah, you must live well in the future. It's a shame that my stutter hasn't improved even now. I hope it won't put people off when I go back to my hometown for arranged dates." I remember that night vividly. "Elijah! Wait for me!" The beautiful, carefree girl waved as she approached. She had been following Elijah for half a year now. I stood quietly in the shadows beneath the tree by the entrance, admiring her just as I admired Elijah. She was like a little son, boldly expressing her affection. With her perfect, illustrious family background and lively, outgoing personality, they looked like a match made in heaven when standing together. At first, Elijah was cold and impatient, avoiding her just as he always did with me. But later, he couldn't help but be moved. Only with her would he lower his guard, allowing her to joke and touch him playfully. Finally, holding the gift she had forcefully given him, he anxiously asked me, "What is it like to fancy someone?" We walked side by side into the moonlight, and I looked down to see his shadow enveloping mine. What was it that I answered then? Stumbling over my words but earnestly, I said, "I suppose, fancying someone, is when you see them, and your heart skips a beat. When you think of them, the corners of your mouth turn up. So you're the one who saved Elijah? You're so pathetic. Since you fancy him, we'll let you fancy him to your heart's content." The brutes who had once assaulted Elijah shoved my head forcefully into the dirty toilet bowl. Fancying someone means being anxious and insecure, sensitive and doubtful. "Elijah! I'm taking you to the hospital. Don't fall asleep. You still have to repay me." In the depths of winter, I screamed desperately, carrying him on my back as he bled from his slashed wrists, stumbling towards the hospital in his semi-conscious state. Fancying someone means caring about their every word, wanting to share everything with them first. I worked 5 jobs and earned £1,200. I bought a cake. "Happy birthday, Elijah." I stood at the entrance with the cake, so happy I hadn't even changed my shoes, smiling at him. Fancying someone is feeling sour, angry, and sweet all at once. The traffic light turned red with a click. I looked up, and Elijah's gaze met mine. Ping! The phone notification startled me awake. My face felt itchy. As I touched it, I realized it was wet with tears. The dream had blurred the present with the past, leaving me disoriented for a good while before I opened the message on my phone. It was from Elijah, just 2 words. Late back. Scrolling up, I saw that our chat history consisted of only a few brief exchanges. Looking at it now, there really wasn't much substance between us. I've had a stutter since childhood and never liked to speak much. As for Elijah, it was just his nature. And after what people did to him, he became even more withdrawn. At home, we'd each do our own thing in silence. When you don't like something, you just don't. Back then, I foolishly hoped that gradually, over time, feelings might develop. I should have given up by now. Suddenly, a series of cheerful pings rang out. Your advice worked brilliantly, Olivia. Elijah finally agreed to have dinner with me at the restaurant. I thought you two were already together. It really gave me a fright at the time. I'll definitely bring a gift to thank you in person. Don't worry, Elijah won't lose out by being with me. She ended with an adorable emoji of a figure falling over with happiness. I couldn't help but smile a little, infected by her joy. I'm an old acquaintance of Elijah's. The mud and broken tiles that witnessed all his embarrassments, symbolizing his most wretched times. She's different. She'll rise with him, her love positive and warm. With better resources, meeting him at his peak. Elijah has already been moved. The little sun will eventually melt the cold, taciturn ice. I can't stop him from going towards someone better than me. But in the next moment, a teardrop splashed onto the screen. I belatedly raised my hand to wipe my eyes. How pathetic. I can't even dry my own tears properly. After a grueling 30-hour bus ride, I returned to my hometown and visited Mom's grave first. I sat there in silence for a while before heading back to my rented flat. The landlady told me that my gambling, alcoholic father had his leg broken by debt collectors and left town. I didn't have much luggage, so it only took me a morning to settle in. As I sat on the bed and closed my eyes, I could still see Elijah's desperate, helpless eyes and his body covered in vile, sticky fluids. He would always calmly tell me, I want to die. In this small town, being smart and good-looking without parents was considered a sin. Especially for someone as exceptional as Elijah. The story was painfully cliché. The gang leader's girlfriend fancied him, and when he rejected her, she falsely accused him of harassment. When a group cornered him in an alley, even fighting back seemed laughable. In the nights that followed, Elijah's body would curl up in bed, uncontrollably shaking and convulsing, his mind tormenting itself. Back then, to support Elijah, I worked 5 jobs, running myself ragged. We lived in a flat where the water and electricity were often cut off, eating cheap pickles just to save a few quid. Later, when he started earning, things got a bit better. But I didn't want to spend his money. I kept working at the restaurant downstairs. It's funny how pride works when you're around someone you care for. You never want to appear lesser. This afternoon, I found a job as a kitchen hand at a nearby restaurant. The pay isn't great in the small town, but it's enough to get by. After all the bustle, I finally had time to check my phone. There were only 2 messages from Elijah. Where are you? The next one was sent at 4 a.m. this morning. You don't want me anymore, do you? Reading that made my eyes well up. It's not that I don't want him. I just don't want to hold each other back. I saved him, and he felt obligated to stay by my side. This kind of relationship was inherently flawed. Besides, approaching 30, I truly wanted to settle down. It all sounds a bit dramatic when you say it out loud. I typed out a long message, but in the end, I only sent, "Take care." There was no response from him. When I opened his profile, I saw that Elijah had posted an update. The photo showed 2 hands intertwined. The caption read, "From now on." It was an announcement. Elijah has a girlfriend now. I looked at it for a while, then liked the post. Silently, I thought to myself, Elijah Carter, happy birthday. May you have many happy years ahead with the one you love. As I turned off my phone and headed home, I noticed my neighbor looking distressed while airing out his flat. The acrid smell of burnt food wafted from inside. I recognized him as the new volunteer teacher who had recently moved in. We'd exchanged glances a few times when he first arrived. He seemed refined and elegant, with a soft-spoken manner, but had unexpectedly passionate eyes that didn't quite match his demeanor. Feeling a bit awkward about approaching him directly, I casually offered as I inserted my key into the lock. "Haven't had dinner yet? If you'd like, you could come to mine." He looked up gratefully, and before I could finish, he replied softly, "That would be lovely, thank you." I hadn't expected him to accept so readily. Feeling a bit embarrassed, I had no choice but to invite him in. With a guest present, I quickly prepared a simple meal. Andrew Bennett, however, reacted quite dramatically. After just one bite, he actually began to tear up. He explained, "I'm sorry. It's been so long since I've had a proper meal, and your cooking is delicious." "Thank you," I replied. Thinking of the burnt smell from his flat, I silently continued eating, hoping he would leave once he finished. To my surprise, he voluntarily started washing the dishes. I frowned slightly, watching him don my Winnie the Pooh apron and stand at the sink with his back to me. From the side, I could see his Adam's apple bob as he swallowed, the veins on the back of his hands prominent. The small apron stretched taut across his broad shoulders. I averted my gaze, unconsciously swallowing. Perhaps because the room was so quiet, the sound was clearly audible. Andrew paused for a moment, then lowered his eyes and continued washing. After finishing, he cleared his throat and finally revealed his true purpose. "Would it be possible for me to come here for meals in the future?" Seeing my furrowed brow, he quickly added, "I'll pay you more than a restaurant would charge, just to cook for me. And I'll take care of the washing up." I hesitated for a moment, remembering what my landlady had told me about him. That teacher next door? He's already rescued 5 cats and helped 2 children out of his own pocket. How could someone like that be a bad person? Besides, being alone in this familiar yet strange place was becoming unbearable for me. Since that day, Andrew has been coming to my place every day after work. At first, he brought fresh ingredients, but now he brings his kitten from home. With a serious smile, he says, "My kitten can do backflips." As for Elijah, he's gone from complete silence to sending me messages every few days, though always in the early hours of the morning. "Where's the hand cream? Can't find that white shirt. Did you take the ceramic dog we made together?" And so on. At first, I patiently replied, "In the drawer of the TV cabinet. In the small cupboard above the coat rack. That ceramic dog broke when we moved. Move to your new house. This place is too far from your university and it's uncomfortable. Don't let Hazel suffer with you. You're just used to me, you'll have to learn to live on your own eventually." He'd always pause before sending back a cold voice message. "You're flattering yourself." I was thorough in my responses, but he ignored them all. Andrew also curiously asked me, "Is it someone you know?" "Who is it indeed?" I lowered my eyes, staring blankly at the dough on the board. "Just someone insignificant." Andrew looked at the photo on my phone's home screen. A pair of expressionless teenagers sitting side by side on a swing. It was clearly taken by a stranger. They weren't close, even a bit distant. But Andrew didn't feel the urge to ask any further questions. Late at night, Elijah made a video call. In the video, he was pale, tightly curled up on the sofa, his pupils gradually losing focus as he looked at the camera. It felt like I'd been hit hard on the back of my head. I suddenly sat up from my chair, an indescribable panic sweeping over me. My fingers were shaking violently as I held the phone. "Elijah! What foolish thing are you doing?" He pressed his lips white, his eyelids struggling to lift, then falling heavily, finally losing strength. The phone spun unsteadily in the air, and at last, all I could see was a blinding red. What if Elijah died? What would I do if he died? I couldn't control my body's trembling as I bought the fastest train ticket available. I was terrified to the point of feeling my heart might burst. Just as I finished packing my clothes, my phone rang again. I quickly swiped to open the message. It was from Hazel. "He's out of danger now, but still unconscious. I thought he was with you. He's taken leave and hasn't eaten for 5 days. I found antidepressants on his coffee table. The doctor says his severe depression has relapsed. What on earth has he been through before? I couldn't read any further after that. I just stared at the words severe depression and relapsed for a long time. An indescribable pain spreading from my stomach to my chest. In the end, I even leaned against the sofa, starting to retch from the physical pain. Mom. Please. I'll be good, I promise. Dad's a bastard, but you still have me. I'll take you away someday, just don't jump. Please. Mom. The car horns and the wind on the rooftop were deafening. I felt as if I was back in the hospital with its pungent smell of disinfectant. Elijah had just woken up in the hospital bed, gripping his hand tightly in a daze. The wounds on his wrist showing signs of reopening due to the force. They both had severe depression. It turns out people can be united in their suffering. I know it's foolish to tie one person's life to another's. Who would care? But I had no choice. I looked up at him, my eyes red-rimmed, and said, Elijah, just live for me, to repay me, to show me the view from the top. What on earth was I doing back then? He had a bright future ahead of him. Now that he's finally managed to move forward and is about to rise up, why should he risk throwing away his promising career and nearly lose his life because of some careless words from someone like me? I couldn't save my mom. I can't save him either. My dad was right, I'm bad luck. Anyone who gets involved with me is bound to suffer greatly. Without me there, with Hazel around, he would recover faster. I canceled my train ticket and sat quietly on the sofa all night, holding that pile of clothes and lost in thought. It wasn't until Hazel messaged me, "He's all right now," that I finally breathed a sigh of relief. My blood began to flow again, and I felt truly alive for the first time in hours. I casually replied to her, "Good to hear." At the same time, Elijah sent me a message. "You didn't come." He deleted it and sent a new one. "I haven't repaid you for anything. We're not even yet." I was suddenly stunned, unable to stop the surge of heartache. "We are even," I replied. He sent back a question mark. Elijah had indeed forgotten. When my father grabbed my hair and beat me at the school gate, everyone was watching, timidly spectating. I was going through puberty then, and it must have been so humiliating. My clothes were torn, skin exposed. In front of teachers and all the students, my father called me a wretch, waste of money, and cheap. Only Elijah stepped forward. He pushed through the crowd, draped his school blazer over me, and firmly shielded me behind him. Elijah was too dazzling back then, a cold and handsome genius. Almost every girl in school had a secret crush on him, competing openly and secretly. I watched his slim back through my tears, hating myself, trembling as I clutched his blazer tightly. As my feelings grew, I would have given my life for him. He was inherently a good person. So someone as good as him shouldn't fall into the mud. I wanted to lift him up. To see with my own eyes the deity I worshipped return to the heavens. The moon should stand shoulder to shoulder with the sun. After that, life went on as usual, just as mundane as before. Or rather, Elijah was the one who brought vibrant colors to my world. When I was with him, even someone as inconspicuous as me, as faint as a watermark on a canvas, could shine brightly. He said, "I don't want you anymore either." The amount he transferred to my bank account left me speechless for a while. And I didn't feel right sending it back immediately. I thought I'd keep it for him, to give back as a wedding gift when he married Hazel. I laughed at myself. Damned pride and self-respect. That evening, when Andrew came over for dinner, he was shocked to see my eyes swollen like walnuts. He insisted on cooking himself, and nearly set the kitchen on fire. I burst into laughter as he stood there, face covered in soot, looking embarrassed. He let out a small oi and hurriedly pulled out 2 tissues. "Why are you crying again?" Why was I crying again? Perhaps because the first time Elijah cooked for me, he was just as awkward, standing in the same spot with a spatula. Expressionless yet clearly annoyed. "It tastes awful. You should cook from now on, or teach me, and I'll learn to cook for you." There is no from now on anymore. Elijah and I, this is where it ends. If there were any divine beings, I would pray 1,000 times for him to fly over mountains and seas, never looking back. Afterwards, Hazel sent me many updates about him. Olivia, he's actively undergoing treatment now. He went back to university today. His previous research won an award. The patent sold for so much money, that's Elijah for you. We're going abroad for a conference soon, with lots of big names in the industry attending. I glanced at the photo she secretly took from a girlfriend's perspective. On the plane, Elijah had fallen asleep, his head tilted onto her shoulder. His high bridge nose and sharp features softened, looking incredibly docile. How rare. Most times I saw him sleep. He was tightly curled up, his whole body twitching, jaw clenched. I was right not to go find him. Just as I put down my phone after replying, Andrew looked down as he picked up some food with his fork and suddenly said, "The landlady mentioned you're going on a blind date today?" Before I could respond, he pursed his lips and looked at me with gentle refinement. "Why don't you give me a try instead?" I was stunned for a long while, forgetting what I was thinking, only to hear myself utter a very soft word much later. "All right." I never thought I'd rush into a relationship like this. At least Andrew is as handsome as Elijah, has a good personality, a stable job, and I know him well. After taking care of someone for so long, I also long to be taken care of. I couldn't keep putting my life on hold. It all made sense. So I tried to open myself up to someone new. 2 months after I returned, autumn arrived. "Mr. Bennett, your girlfriend's here to pick you up." Oh my, look at Mr. Bennett's face, he's grinning from ear to ear. Can't stand the lovey-dovey atmosphere. That food smells amazing. "Mr. Bennett, you're lucky to have her. Olivia dear, you shouldn't spoil him so much. Last time he brought the lunchbox you made and showed it off in the office." Andrew kept chuckling amidst the teasing, as he rushed towards me through the after-school crowd. We walked side by side as I handed him the warm, sweet potato I had been keeping in my pocket. He held my hand and tucked it into his coat pocket. Passers-by kept glancing our way, drawn by his striking looks. I suddenly felt uncomfortable, my back stiffening. I was never good at making small talk to ease the awkwardness. Fortunately, Andrew always had plenty to say. He talked about his students, about Cat Mimi, about us. "Olivia, don't feel pressured. We can take things slow. We have plenty of time ahead of us." I tried hard to listen, but in the end, I couldn't help but zone out. A few days later was my birthday, which he had been preparing for a long time. He presented me with a large bouquet of fiery red roses, his loving eyes peeking out from behind the flowers. Stepping over balloons, I sat down to the most romantic candlelit dinner I'd ever had. Elijah could never even remember my birthday, let alone give me a single rose. It was strange. At the height of the romantic atmosphere, when Andrew leaned in to kiss me, I suddenly thought of him. No! I jolted as if waking from underwater, my breathing ragged as I struggled to push away the man in front of me. When I came to my senses, I saw the hurt in his eyes. I hurriedly stood up to steady him, weakly apologizing. Stammering, I felt utterly disgusted with myself. How could I treat someone's genuine feelings for me so carelessly? The stifling air pressed in, squeezing all the breath from my chest until I could barely breathe. In my ears, countless voices cursed at me. "Olivia Shaw! You can't do anything right. You couldn't save your mom, you messed up Elijah. And now you're going to drive this wonderful man into deep depression too? You're just a disgusting freak. A jinx. Why? Why don't you just die already?" My pupils shook violently as I watched large teardrops splatter on the floor. I babbled almost incoherently. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, I'm sorry, if you want, I can." I can. In the dim candlelight, Andrew gently pressed down on my trembling hands, then pulled me into his arms. He rested his chin on my shoulder, his voice soothing as it came from above my head. "Olivia, if you think this is too fast, we can talk about it later. It's not your fault, I was too hasty. Don't feel burdened. I saw my reflection in his eyes as I lay in his embrace, going from quiet sobs to gentle weeping and finally breaking down in loud cries. The next day, he knocked on my door again, holding a bag of groceries. "I've come to blag a meal," he said with a smile. We both tacitly avoided mentioning what had happened before. The water in the pot bubbled and boiled, sending up plumes of steam. Through the mist, Mimi affectionately nuzzled my hand, making me laugh. The wind chime at the window tinkled. Andrew lowered his gaze to my back as he stirred the prawns in the pot with a ladle, his breathing slowing. Days passed like this. Just when I thought everything was back on track, I saw Elijah sleeping at my doorstep, his head buried between his knees, looking thin and fragile, like a stray dog drenched by a downpour with nowhere to go. I froze on the stairs, my steps becoming slow and hesitant. He slowly raised his eyes and caught me before I could escape. I didn't know how Elijah had gotten here, or why he had come back. Before asking, I silently made him a bowl of noodles. His eyes glistened with unshed tears as he ate. Not hurriedly, but finishing every last drop of the sauce. His phone had been ringing nonstop since he entered, but he didn't even glance at it. "You need to go back," I said. It was the first thing I'd said to him since he arrived. He looked at me silently, not saying a word. I frowned and opened Hazel's profile, about to type a message when Elijah held his palm over the screen. "It hurts," he said. The white scars on his wrist were like meandering lines, tugging painfully at one's heart. I looked up. He stared at his wrist, frowning in confusion. "I don't understand. Since you left, it's been hurting here constantly. At first, I could bear it, but then it spread to my heart. I shake at night, it hurts worse than being cut with a knife. I've tried painkillers, but they don't work. I've seen a therapist, but she couldn't help either. You're the only one who can help. I had to come find you, Olivia. Please, help me." His hoarse voice made "please" help me sound like "please, save me." I lowered my eyes, my breathing becoming irregular. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door, and Andrew's voice came from outside. I woke up as if from a dream. I rushed past him to open the door, almost like I was escaping. The calico cat in his arms sniffed the air, seemingly catching the scent of someone else, and its fur began to bristle slightly. I stroked Mimi's fur, about to speak, when a warm body pressed against me from behind. Elijah covered my hand with his own, while his other hand rested on the doorframe, completely enveloping me in his embrace. He looked at the man in front of us with a hint of hostility and asked, "Olivia, who is this?" Andrew recognized him almost instantly. He raised an eyebrow and said challengingly, enunciating each word, "Her boyfriend." I nodded under Elijah's scrutinizing gaze and stepped out of his embrace. Calmly and frankly, I said, "Elijah, I can't help you." Once upon a time, he would bury himself in the lab, calculating formulas I couldn't understand and tinkering with colorful vials. It was like a series of beautiful dreams. I stood outside those dreams, watching him day after day. Even then, I knew that someone like me could never be part of his dreams. He had a bright future ahead, a chance to showcase his talents, and he had Hazel. The phantom pain of not belonging would eventually fade. Elijah refused to leave, and so did Andrew. The two sat on the sofa, staring at each other, while Mimi repeatedly hissed at the expressionless Elijah. I sent a message to Hazel, asking her to come and take him away. She replied instantly with a crying cat emoji. "He's actually already explicitly rejected me. And my dad wants me to marry someone else. I don't want to pursue him anymore. He's truly a wonderful and excellent person." I froze, looking up just in time to see Elijah's face turn pale as he collapsed onto the sofa. In that moment, my mind and heart were in turmoil. The doctor said that Elijah hadn't been sleeping well for a long time, and his eating habits were irregular, causing his already highly exhausted body to suffer even more. Moreover, the long journey and restlessness had led to a high fever for 2 days. I don't know how many times I've sat by his hospital bed, staring blankly at the IV drip as it ticked away. It's always like this whenever he encounters me. Andrew stood behind me and embraced me. I turned my head and buried it in his waist, saying painfully, "Andrew, I don't know if I can be a good partner." He leaned down and pressed his cheek against my forehead, whispering, "Don't think too much. I'm here." Meeting Elijah was like spring in an old hometown. I dared not ask for more. I was afraid that if he got close, it would automatically open Pandora's box. And those agonizing memories would drive him mad again. I was about to start my new life too. I couldn't let Andrew down. The person on the bed opened his eyes with difficulty, not knowing how much he had heard. He pressed his lips white in pain and said confusedly, "Olivia, my wrist is hurting again." The fever wasn't a big problem. He just needed to go home and take good care of himself. Andrew had to leave first due to school matters. After paying the fees, Elijah and I sat side by side on the bus in silence. The sky gradually darkened, and the dimness and the bright lights from the shops intertwined and swayed in the empty bus. His fingertips slowly approached and grasped my hand, his knuckles tightening. It was as if he was afraid that if he let go, I would disappear again. The bus seemed to be carrying a slideshow, and we looked out the window together at the places most familiar to each other. The constantly renovated streets, the not-so-crowded clinic, the internet cafe with its flickering sign, tea, he fish and chip shop where students came and went, and the lush cherry blossom trees at the corner of the street. The old yellow dog that often wandered around there. That spot where 3 or 4 students always gathered after school. They were all filled with our sticky and unspeakable past. The willow trees provided shade, a cool breeze blew, and autumn had arrived before we knew it. He began to ramble uncontrollably. "You used to always bring me sausage rolls from that shop. I used to think they were too greasy and would eat a few bites before giving them to you. Your eyes would light up, and every time I'd think they actually tasted quite good. In winter when it was so cold, you'd always give me your only scarf when we walked out together. I didn't understand then why your face was always red after being so close so many times. You also said many times that you wanted to see the snow up north. You bought meat from the market, saying you'd cook something nice. I curled up on one end of the sofa, and you stood in the kitchen. When the steam rose and the aroma slowly drifted over, I actually thought this was quite nice, that this was good enough. I always acted aloof, not wanting to be tied to you just because you saved me. But you never did, never did. I even started to resent you for not doing so. I hated this city, but I fell in love with someone here." Elijah closed his eyes briefly, his hands starting to tremble slightly. His voice was hoarse as he said, "I saw you as a nuisance, only wanting to be even. To get rid of you and live a new life without you. But after you left, I couldn't sleep. I got used to eating your cooking and couldn't stomach anyone else's food anymore. I couldn't help but post photos visible only to you, childishly hoping you'd ask me about them, so I could clarify that I had no relationship with Hazel. I quietly waited for you to come back to me, like you had many times before. I tried living a new life, but I couldn't do it. I can't live without you." But by the time I realized it, you were already gone. He took a breath and turned to look at me. The wind blew his bangs messily across his forehead as he choked out, "Don't send me away. I'll be good. Olivia, you can't be so cruel to me, to lift me up and then abandon me. You told me to live well, and I did. But what am I supposed to do? It hurts so much being alone. I've never hurt like this before. Olivia, look at me. Please take pity on me one more time. Without you, I really don't know what to do." This time, it was my turn to look up into Elijah's eyes. They were bloodshot, glistening with tears, shattered into pieces. He looked at me sadly and bitterly. Those eyes were finally not cold, but pleading. My first interaction with Elijah seemed to have been on a bus too. After school, he was pushed to the ground by some boys, scraping his elbow and bleeding uncontrollably. Even after getting on the bus, it was still a bloody mess. At that time, I was one of the many who had a secret crush on Elijah. In the swaying, crowded bus, I nervously pulled out a plaster from my school bag. My hand was even shaking as I held it out to him and looked up to ask, "Excuse me, do you need a plaster?" The young man looked down at me in surprise, his messy hair falling slightly. his oversized school uniform swaying with the bus. It was such a large wound. How stupid of me. Elijah, I have a boyfriend now, I said, fighting back the sting in my eyes as I withdrew my hand. And looked at him calmly. When you're better, I'll take you home. When I returned, the landlady looked upset and pointed at the building entrance. Be careful, she warned. Your father's back. He's waiting outside your flat. If I was the one who sealed away all of Elijah's painful memories, then my father was undoubtedly mine. My mother's death because of him. My self-esteem torn apart in adolescence. The daily fists and beer bottles landing on my body. I hated him. As much as I loved Elijah, I hated my father just as much, possibly even more. As I saw my father, his face gradually came into focus. As repulsive as ever. The man with half-gray hair approached sleazily, limping as he came forward. Olivia, you've grown so big. Daddy heard you were back and rushed home. Have you missed me all these years? I coldly opened the door, and the man tried to enter. You even have a boyfriend now. Daddy's been really short on money lately. You're my own flesh and blood, couldn't you? Just as Elijah was about to step in with a frown, I emotionlessly grabbed a kitchen knife. I calmly instructed, call the police. The man's face instantly darkened as he started cursing. What are you playing at? You ungrateful little. Before he could finish, I swung the knife towards his neck without hesitation. He fell back, terrified. You bloody witch. Wait till your old man comes back to sort you out. The man stumbled to his feet, a wet patch spreading across his trousers. With a final curse, he hurriedly fled. My eyes blazed with fury as I spat through gritted teeth. Let me go. I wanted to kill that beast. But Elijah held me tightly as I lost control completely. He buried his head in my neck, his eyes gradually reddening. It was then that he suddenly realized. During all our time together, when he had been at his lowest point, too overwhelmed to care about others, he had never asked about my past. The past of the girl who had desperately carried him back from the alley of despair in the dead of night. How helpless and broken must she have been, to make him so terrified now? His breath quivered as he drew close, his voice pained. Olivia, the scars are hurting again. It hurts so much, it really hurts. The motion sensor light clicked off. Then suddenly flashed on again. I turned my head, my gaze empty. To see Andrew standing frozen at the bottom of the stairs. His eyes filled with sympathy. Does it still hurt? I was exhausted as I sank into the sofa, unable to muster even an ounce of strength. I had just learned how much energy it takes to both hate and love someone. After taking his medicine, he spoke with difficulty. Can you tell me about your past? My past was twisted and dull, nothing worth hearing really. The only part that involved him was from the uninteresting perspective of a bystander. I watched him stand on the award podium like a tall pine tree, the model student. I saw girls lining up to give him love letters and treats. Yet he could still focus on his studies without a sideways glance. I observed him rejecting confessions with a blank face. So bluntly it seemed cruel, ignoring the tears that inevitably fell. Or perhaps it was the insecurity of knowing that in this lifetime, we'd never cross paths, not even daring to dream of it. I was far more timid than him. Elijah, the truth is, long before I saved you, I had been secretly and carefully in love with you for a very long time. But when I saw Hazel, I felt even my jealousy was shameful. So I told myself, Elijah should be with an equally beautiful and excellent girl. That would be normal. Whenever he got close to me, it was like Pandora's box would automatically open. I was truly afraid those agonizing memories would drive him mad again. I was the most unsuitable person for him. After a long silence, I finally said, I've bought the train ticket. You'll leave tomorrow night. As I stood up, he suddenly grabbed the hem of my shirt. His grip was so tight his knuckles turned white, leaving a red mark. He looked up at me like a defeated dog, forcing a smile. Can I not go? I closed my eyes briefly, then with a click, turned off the light. Andrew stood at the doorway, gently taking my hand. It was my first time entering his house. And like his personality, it was excessively tidy. I slept on the bed while he took the sofa. Before sleep, he suddenly whispered an apology. I looked up, puzzled. He chuckled softly, "It's nothing. We still have a long time to get to know each other." With that, he leaned down to kiss my forehead. I gently dodged, stammering guiltily. "Just give me a bit more time. Of course, I'm always patient with you." Elijah's fragile, tearful eyes flashed in my mind again, making my heart ache. I gave a soft in response, watching Andrew's back as he closed the door. I forcefully pushed those eyes out of my thoughts. Time heals all wounds, I told myself. I would marry Andrew, have children with him, and spend the rest of my life trying to love him. I couldn't possibly let down such a gentle person again. Just a little longer, I needed just a little more time. If only I hadn't come out for water that night and seen the message from Hazel on his phone left on the dining table. "Cousin, have you managed to get Olivia Shaw yet? We don't need you anymore, come back soon, the family's pressuring you." Coquettish and willful. I froze on the spot. Scrolling up, I read more. "Cousin, can you get that girl away from Elijah? You've dated so many, you know best how to play with girls' hearts. I'm worried my senior might really like her. She's a bit plain and even stutters, but please. I'll treat you to a fancy dinner when you're back. If worst comes to worst, you can dump her after you've got her." You had dinner at her place? Impressive. I told you she's desperate for love, right? People pleaser personality, she'll pity you and give in. That's how I sweet-talked her before. Why haven't you replied for so long? Don't tell me you're getting too into playing the good boyfriend? Actually, I think she's quite pitiful too, you should probably wrap this up soon. Andrew's reply was, "As if she's worthy?" I don't know how I managed to sit there all night, holding the darkened phone, staring blankly at the bedhead. No wonder Andrew happened to come to my school as a volunteer teacher. No wonder he was so enthusiastic and tolerant, directly suggesting we try dating when he heard I was going for matchmaking. No wonder he apologized to me earlier. I began to deeply despise myself, not even feeling my nails digging into my flesh. How could someone be so stupid? Smiling and counting money for those who deceived me. Why does it seem like everything I do is wrong, never yielding good results? I lowered my head, suddenly feeling utterly drained. Marriage? Children? Wanting to start a stable new life? As if I'm worthy? A useless person like me only brings trouble to others. A burden, how dare I dream of a peaceful life? To my mom, to Andrew Bennett, and especially to Elijah Carter. As waves of darkness surged before my eyes, I found myself not as desperate as I had imagined. I got up, feeling as if my feet were treading on cotton. My body swayed in the air for a moment, as I gently placed Andrew's phone back on the bedside table. Rising, I walked towards the rooftop. I never expected to see my father on the rooftop. He had been secretly following me, approaching with a knife glinting in his hand. His face flushed red as if he'd been drinking. He roared at me. "I should never have had you. A girl. Worthless thing. Either give me money, or I'll kill you." The wind howled across the rooftop, the sky still a pitch-black void, the air heavy with a lingering dampness. I looked at him silently, feeling contempt and disgust, but suddenly not so much hatred anymore. I think I understood Elijah a bit better now. When all exits are blocked, there's only one path left to consider. Kill me. So kill me then. Just like how he slowly murdered Mom in their intimate relationship. He's weak and incompetent, yet loves to act fierce, hating it most when others look down on him. Under the influence of alcohol, he actually started charging towards me from his unsteady stance. Slowly, I closed my eyes. "Olivia!" But before that, someone called out in heart-wrenching anguish, holding me tightly in their arms. There was the sound of something piercing flesh, followed by a man's stifled groan above my head. I snapped my eyes open, pupils constricting. Elijah's forehead was beaded with sweat, blood rapidly soaking through and spreading from his side, the gleaming knife buried deep in his body. Behind him was Andrew, who had rushed over urgently. The man was still roaring with a twisted face. "Let you money-losing wretch, show off. I'll kill you. Kill you." Andrew finally ran over and restrained him to the ground. The biting wind, Andrew's inquiries. The man's roars and struggles all blended into a deafening buzz in my ears. The surroundings suddenly lost color, sounds muffled. And all I could see was that glaring red patch on Elijah's waist. My breath nearly stopped, my legs felt like lead, unable to move an inch. Elijah. Elijah! I stumbled a step, my remaining rationality replaced by darkness. Tears flowing almost numbly, the surrounding sounds receding like a tide. Leaving only his. He called out softly, "Olivia." The sky suddenly brightened. Brilliantly lit, inexplicably sorrowful. "I'm here, I'm right here. Don't you dare close your eyes." In the end, I was so panicked that I clumsily tried to cover his wound. When Andrew attempted to help me up, I fixed my gaze on Elijah and struggled to break free from his grasp. Andrew's face instantly turned pale. Except for red, I couldn't see any other color. Extreme fear overwhelmed my entire body. Elijah might die, he might leave my world completely, just like my mother did. Awkward concern, love and hate, right and wrong, none of it mattered to me anymore. It was then that I realized, painfully, that it was impossible. I loved Elijah so much. I had filled my heart with him, letting him take root and grow over the years. Moving even slightly caused unbearable pain. There wasn't a fraction of that love left to give to anyone else. From youth to old age. If only Elijah could live. If only he could survive. I don't know how I managed to get into the ambulance with him. Elijah held my hand tightly, not letting go for a moment. This was the second time he asked me, "Olivia, what is love?" Before I could answer, he gazed at me longingly, as if he might not have another chance, and spoke. "Love is waking up repeatedly in an empty room, only to find that the person you want to see isn't there. Just that bit of pale moonlight, realizing that even a touch has become a luxury. It's risking your life to gain sympathy, only to hear the cold words she didn't come in the hospital room. It's staring at photos together late into the night, unable to resist sending a few messages, cherishing even those belated happy memories desperately, regretting the foolish things you've done. It's striving to be better because of one word from her, rushing towards that person on a summer night. It's unspoken understanding, jealousy, bitterness, and stolen glances. Olivia, it's you." His voice grew softer and softer until the doctor put an oxygen mask on him. My face turned pale, tears streaming down, blurring his face from my sight. I repeated over and over, "Elijah, you must live. Live to hear me say I love you." The day Andrew bid me farewell, I was sitting numbly in the hospital corridor. My hands and feet were ice cold, shaking uncontrollably. He struggled to breathe, and as he touched the back of my hand, I flinched away as if startled. My eyes were filled with an undisguisable coldness and disgust. His eyes suddenly reddened. "Olivia, I'm sorry." I still didn't react, staring fixedly at the light above the ane. Andrew seemed at a loss, clutching his chest and doubling over in pain. His heart felt as if it were being ripped out and crushed piece by piece. Suddenly, he couldn't even bring himself to say he truly cared for me. At this point, it was all his own doing, his just desserts. I don't know how long he stayed before leaving, nor when he left me a check for a considerable sum. Either way, he and I had no connection anymore. It wasn't until 2 days later that Elijah finally woke up in his hospital bed. He slowly opened his eyes. The frozen emotions and sensations thawed, and countless sounds flooded into my ears. The smell of disinfectant was particularly pungent. I looked at him, tears gradually welling up in my eyes, and choked out with great difficulty, "Elijah, you're an idiot, aren't you?" Elijah also dreamed of some past events. The start of term was bustling, with laughter and chatter filling the air, unlike Elijah. He climbed the stairs, silent and withdrawn. But on that particular day, the spring sunshine was brilliant, with grass growing and birds singing. A girl came, carrying a stack of new books, standing at the bottom of the steps and looking up to ask him calmly, "Excuse me, How do I get to the year 12 classrooms? From his higher vantage point, the wind rustled the hem of her blouse. She looked at him, her gaze as clear as spring water. In that moment, she looked straight into his heart.